Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Herman. I am so excited to once again welcome my new friend and mentor, Tim Farrant. He is the author of the amazing book, She's Selling What? And it is the coolest book. Every person in network marketing and direct sales needs to read it and needs to have their spouse read it. If they won't read it, then you need to handcuff them and read it to them. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our speaker for tonight, Tim Farrant. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to tell everybody at the end how they can find you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Jill. Appreciate it. And appreciate your support and so grateful to be able to share with you guys. So my heart and passion, I want to talk about something that, in my opinion, is not talked about enough in the network marketing and direct sales space, and that is the spouse, the partner of the person who's doing the business, who often is skeptical, who often has a bunch of questions, who often can be one of the biggest limiting beliefs or obstacles to people who are trying to build a successful business, and yet is so often not engaged, not resourced, not helped at all to overcome their struggles. And I'll talk a little bit about this in a little bit, but that's why I wrote a book, to help those skeptical spouses. So today we're going to talk about one specific thing that is just absolutely critical. And so many of us who are husbands and spouses feel this way. And it's that we are embarrassed. We are embarrassed of our wife's business. Can you hear me okay, Jill? Or is it cutting out? I saw a note there. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, sorry about that. And it is that we are embarrassed. I remember, now I know there's a bunch of people on here from a lot of different kind of direct sales and network marketing companies. So my wife happens to sell essential oils. So I remember the first time a coworker of mine said, "Hey, Tim, I hear Becky's doing something new or different." And I had to say, "Oh yeah, she's selling, and I didn't want to say it out loud. Like, I was embarrassed because I knew then they were going to put all the pieces together and they were going to say, "Isn't that one of those pyramid scheme companies? Isn't that one of those other things in the products?" And I was thoroughly embarrassed. And then I had to ask myself this question. Why was I embarrassed? Why was I embarrassed to not support my wife? And so it's because of that, and it's a journey that I had to go on to overcome that skepticism, to learn more about the financial freedom that is available in this industry, about how you can build a successful, incredible business with a low startup cost and scale it in an incredible way, all that stuff. Which is why I ended up writing this book, to engage spouses, skeptical spouses that were just like me, to engage them and help them overcome their skepticism and become active supporters of their wife. Okay, so we're going to talk about this big thing of how to help them overcome their embarrassment. And in my opinion, as I've talked to a bunch of husbands and been doing research for this, and a bunch of this is in the book, there are 4 key reasons why people are embarrassed. But before I tell you the reasons, I want to pause for a second, because I know some of you, this is really personal. You're sitting here and you're hoping that I say something that can help you with your spouse personally. And if you hang on, I'm going to be able to do that for you. But secondly, some of you are jumping on this, and maybe you're like Jill and have an incredibly supportive spouse, but the truth is you're running into this all the time on your team, as you're bringing on new people on your team and you don't know how to help them with this. And so you're going to have to toggle your brain back and forth a little bit as I talk about this. Some of it's going to be personal to you. Some of it's going to be to your team, okay? But what I want to start off and tell you is, how do you engage in this conversation out of that? Before I give you the 4 reasons, how do you even engage in the conversation right out of the gate? Here's what I would tell you. Sit down. Ask your husband the question, say, or your partner, whoever it is, and say, "Listen, I know that you're embarrassed. I know you're struggling with this. Would you tell me why? Would you help me understand at the core why you're embarrassed?" And then, this is so important, please listen, shut up and listen, right? Just shut up and listen to them. Don't get defensive. They're going to say some things that may offend you about your business or your product. Don't get defensive. Listen, ask questions, try and understand where they're coming from. And then even at the end of that, you can say, wow, thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'm going to think about this a little bit and then get back to you. Okay. And if you take that approach, first of all, depending on how like fights and arguments normally go, your spouse may go, okay, what are you up to here? Like, what are you trying to manipulate me somehow? Like, what's going on? But if you will just listen, because I think what you're going to discover is it's going to be one of these 4 key areas, and there's some validity to their obstacles and their embarrassment, but there's also easy ways that you can overcome them and win that spouse onto your team. Okay? So here we go. 4 reasons. The first one is we have seen it done poorly. The first reason why so many of us are embarrassed is because we've seen it done poorly. I mean, come on. All of you that are on this, watching this, you can think in your head right now of other people who spam the junk out of people in order to build their business, who hound every friend and family member from like high school or any other walk of life to join them and keep coming at them. You've seen it done poorly. So if I'm embarrassed because I think that you're going to be associated with them, can you at least admit that me as a skeptical spouse, there's some validity to that, to feeling that way? And I just want to shoot straight with you. I get it. I'm actually a pastor. Like, that's my full-time job. I support my wife just like I'm asking every other husband to. And so that's my full-time job. Do you think I have any stereotypes? Do you think I have anybody that when I say I'm a pastor, all of you when I said that had some kind of an opinion of me that may have shifted from what you thought previously? I fight it all the time because the truth is there are some pastors that have done some bad stuff. They've taken advantage of people. They've spent time in jail. They've taken money from people. Like, they have. But here's what's also true. There's a whole lot of us that love Jesus, that love our people, that are trying to make our communities better. And there's a whole lot of us like that. And the same is true in this industry. There are some people that do it bad. But what you need to do is help your husband, your spouse, your partner understand, I know there's some people that do it embarrassing, but I'm not going to. Like, here's how I want to go about building it. Even ask them, you want to do something radical, ask your spouse to help you think through some strategy and some ways that you can help build your business and get the word out in ways that aren't so embarrassing to them. You ask that question, now all of a sudden they perk up and they start giving you ideas. Even if they're bad ones, take a couple of them. Like, take a couple of them and do them, throw them a bone for just giving a suggestion. And all of a sudden, like, those of us who are dudes, like, we're sitting there like, yeah, she listened to me. Like, yeah, that did that work? You know, like, there's part of that we want to be involved. And if you throw us some bones like that and help us get involved, it's going to help us overcome that stereotype and skepticism, okay? And you'll start to see our ownership level rise and our support level rise as we engage with you, all right? So that's the first one. We've seen it done poorly, and it's true, so admit it. And then show them how you're gonna do it differently. All right, number 2 reason, core reason why we get embarrassed is we don't believe in the product. Whatever the product is that you're selling, for some of you, it may be vitamins or maybe supplements or maybe makeup or maybe, I mean, it could be anything, right? We don't believe in the products. See, the way we've all grown up is the validity of a product depends on if you can buy it at like a brick and mortar store, or if like the FDA can approve it, or whatever the thing is, right? And so we struggle with not believing in the product, because we would look and we'd say, can't you just buy our kids vitamins at Walmart? Like, they're a whole lot cheaper. A vitamin's a vitamin, right? Or like, can't you get that makeup somewhere else? And I mean, and here's the thing, you know, because you're in this industry, you know that so many of these products are much higher quality and have much better results. But guess what? We don't know it. And so how can you help us understand some more about the validity of your product. So this is where it's a little more art than science, depending on your spouse, right? Some of your spouse or partners may be like research geeks. And if that's the case, give them some stuff, give them some studies, show them some results. Others may care about stories. And so share the success stories that people are having with them. You know, for some of you, you have products that your spouse could actually try and get on board with. Have them try it. Ask them to try it for 30 days. And then here's the thing. If you have a product like that and they will try it, do not expect that they're going to be pumped and passionate about trying it, because they're not. So I know you want them to like fall in love with it overnight, but they're not going to. So you have to treat them like any other customer. Hold their hand a little bit, walk them along in the process, and help them get on board as they understand the validity of the product, okay? But that's another key reason, is we just don't believe in the product. You can help us overcome that one. Okay, the third one. This is a big one. And this, you may take offense to this when I say it, but please hear me out, okay? We do not believe in our wife's ability. We're embarrassed because our wife is about to go, or our partner is about to go public and say they're building this incredible business and it's going to be awesome. And we're going, you don't have a business degree. Like, you've never built a sales team before. Like, how is that going to happen? And just so you can be clear, like, this is fair. It's fair. Because if you flipped it and your spouse or partner came home like tonight and said, I'm going to start a cake building business or a cake baking business, like, you would look and go, what? Are you kidding me? You don't cook, you don't bake at all. You don't know anything about cakes. Like, we feel the same way when you come at home and say you're going to build some business and you've never built a sales team or a sales force before. And so what you have to help us do to overcome this is a couple things. One, explain how this scales. You don't have to be a business pro day one to start a direct sales or network marketing business. It's the beauty of this business, is that you get to learn as you go. And so explain to us how this can be scaled. And then in addition to that, explain to us and help us understand the training that is available. So many of your teams, so many of your uplines, so many of your companies have great training programs. And so help us understand the training that's going to come along with that, and that it's going to be scalable, right? You're not going to make six figures, your first week in this business. And so set expectations appropriately and scale it to help us understand how you're going to grow your business. All right. So that's the third one. We don't believe in your ability. So don't come in hot saying you're going to build this most incredible business. You're going to start making six figures like in 2 months and all that kind of stuff, because we struggle to believe that. All right. Help us get on board by scaling and explain the training. All right. Then the fourth one is this. We actually don't think that you're going to make any money. Like, we don't think you're going to make any money. And so we're embarrassed that you're going to go out there and say, you're going to start this business and who wants to join me? And you're going to have a product. And if you have to turn around and tell people like, yeah, they just quit because they didn't make any money, or it wasn't as great as they thought it would be, or those types of things. And I think for most husbands, this is a core issue for us to overcome, because we have been trained from the day we turned 16 and got our first jobs that we trade hours for dollars. And this business does not work this way, which is why, and I talk about this in my book, it's one of the biggest things you have to get every single spouse and partner to do, is to learn and understand the compensation plan. Because until that happens, you can't have a meaningful conversation around your business. It can't happen until they understand how the compensation works. And so I know I've talked about this before, even on a training I did with Jill, but you have got to, when you sign up that person to join the business, that wife, you've got to figure out a way to get the spouse or partner on a call or sit across the table or whatever to learn the compensation plan also, and ask questions. And as they do, they're going to get to see how you make money. They're going to get to see the way the business works. They're going to start asking some questions themselves about how it works. And as they do, you're engaging them. You're helping to overcome obstacles. You're helping to explain it to them in a way that they can understand, and they'll get supportive as well. So you've got to overcome this idea that we don't think you'll make any money, and the only way to get there is for us to understand the compensation plan and the business model. Okay, so those are the 4 key areas that why we are embarrassed. And for most of us, it's one or maybe it's even a few of those reasons why. So here's kind of at the end what I want to say. As you engage in this conversation, again, whether it's with your spouse personally, or with people on your team, as you're coaching them how to do this, 1, validate the spouse's concerns. Because I think if you look at those 4 reasons, and if you're objective about it, there's some validity to it, that they feel that way. So validate it. Don't get defensive, but validate that. And then be patient with him. Be patient as they need to work through and overcome all this stuff, and engage them in a conversation by overcoming some of these obstacles. So I want to end by just saying, unapologetically, it's my personal opinion. Of course, I'm a little biased. I think every single person who's married in network marketing needs to get a copy of the book, She's Selling What? And every single person who is on your team, you need to get it in their hands if they're married. I actually think it's an incredible gift to give to every new person who joins your team who is married, because if we can figure out how to get that skeptical, unsupportive spouse on board in the first 90 days, not only will it increase, and it's happening all over. I'm hearing stories every single week from people. It will not only increase the success rate of that woman in her business, but it will also help their marriage, which again, going all the way back to the beginning, for those of you that are new to knowing me and have never heard me before, I didn't write this book. I didn't write this book because I want to be some network marketing, direct sales guru. I wrote it because I care about people's marriages and families. And I'm telling you, this is a game changer to not only help people be more successful in their business, but also help their marriages really, really thrive in the process. You can follow us, my wife and I, on Facebook. Right now, we just have our personal pages and that kind of stuff. And my wife and I do some really fun marriage videos that are just basic marriage stuff that you can kind of follow along, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you for the comments. Some of you throwing comments on there about reading the book and that kind of stuff. Oh, one other thing too, Joe, real quick before I finish. If your husband's not a reader, it's also on Audible, which is super helpful. That's the way a lot of guys have started engaging this, because they're not readers to begin with, and then their spouse is actually asking them to read a book. And so they'll jump on Audible to listen to it while they're driving and those kind of things. It's another great way to get it in their hands. All right, Jill, that's it. That's what I got.
Man, I can't believe you were able to do that, you guys. I said to him, hey, last minute request, we need to do this in 25 minutes or less. And he's like, no problem. A couple things. So I have some very seasoned colleagues on the line watching. Susie Cruzy has an enormous multi-million-dollar business, and some others I see on here. And I point that out because they're giving the thumbs up to this book. Guys, those of you watching, I don't know Tim at all, but in my brief interactions with him, I want you to know that it really, his driving force behind this book really is that he saw a need in their own business and no one else was filling it. And it's a huge, huge, huge asset and a huge blessing to our industry. One thing that you may not expect with the book that I was very surprised by, and I like that he didn't say tonight, is that he puts a ton of coaching in there. So it's not just a book on how to get your husband to blah, blah, blah. If you already have a supportive spouse or you're not even married, read the book, because there's great coaching on how to build this business. I mean, lots of great coaches. I've been doing this 12 years and I was like, well, that's really good. So that was surprising. And then the last thing I want to add that I know Susie would agree with is that when, first of all, two things. I loved, Tim, when you said that when the spouse has these objections, which just comes from fear, in the very beginning, it's so important that the upline and the sidelines tell the new person. They don't just meet the husband with, meeting him where he is, but they tell the new person. I many times will say, I always say to the new person, here's the deal. I hear you. I actually understand why your husband feels that way. Because we need to defend him to the new person, because she's going to feel so insecure and defensive as she's trying to just get her sea legs in the first 90 days. But if we say, no, we get it. We understand why he feels that way. He'll come around. It really puts them at ease. And then this last thing I was going to say, Tim and I talked about in the last call that he agreed with, was once you do get even one guy on the team who used to be skeptical, who isn't, get him in front of all the other guys. Have him make messages, have him have a little selfie video that you can send to everybody where he says, I was there with you, man. I came around. I so fully support this business. And I think it's important, Susie, I don't know if you agree. I think it's important that it's not just the one who's making the most money, because I think the husband's going, well, of course that husband says so. She's making 15 grand a month. But if it's someone whose wife just loves it and it's grown her as a person, even if she's making $200 a month, that spouse sometimes has more credibility. Would you agree, Tim? That's sort of a loaded question. Do you agree with me?
No, I absolutely do. Absolutely do. I mean, people look at me, right? Like at the point that Becky is now, she's successful, right? And so people look and it's like, yeah, it's easy for you. And it's like, listen, dude, it wasn't that way. And I could tell stories about how I was my wife's obstacle. I was a limiting belief, and it hurt our marriage, and it didn't have to be that way,
Mm-hmm.
And then get another husband who started right, and you have them share. It's incredible. It is incredible.
It is. And I think the last thing I could say is that the husbands that come across this way, it sometimes can be like, drives me bananas. It's like the one obstacle in this business drives me crazy. Yet I've decided in the last 5 years or so to really come at them from a place of love and grace and say, you know what? Here's the deal. They are just being protective of their wife. I say, wifey, listen, I know he sounds like a total jerk, but if you really think about it, it's his insecurity, or it's his fear around it because he loves you. He wants to, I shouldn't have said insecurity, his fear around it because he's trying to protect you. He doesn't want you to get hurt. He doesn't want you to be embarrassed. He doesn't want you to put a ton of time in away from the family and have it fail. So he's coming with all these objections because his job is to protect you. So if he knows we're on the same side, that will be helpful.
Yeah. So I talked about this before, but that's where when you engage in that first kind of conversation with the husband, you got to win them over. And I think we talked about this on the first training I did, but you got to win them over, and you got to look at them eye to eye and say, listen, we're on the same team here. Like, I want what's best for your family. And so when you see your wife start to slip, or she's not, whatever it is, like, you call me, like, let's have the conversation, like, let's be on the same team, because I want this to be a win for your family and a win for her in business. And you take that approach to win them onto your side, then that person's like, okay, yeah, I can trust you. And we all want that. It's not manipulative. Every single one of us want the people on our team to have thriving businesses and successful marriages and families, right? We're not trying to destroy people's families by bringing them into business. It's nobody's intention. And so it's from a genuine place with them to share that and to win them. So
Totally
great point.
agree. Thank you so much, Tim. So we have this live streaming in some different groups. Lots of people are seeing this tonight. So again, do you have a website where they get the book, or just go to Amazon?
You can get it anywhere. Yeah, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever. And again, it is on Audible as well. So it's on, like Kindle, anything you want. Yeah, it's everywhere. So
Awesome. All right. Are there any places you're going to be speaking? You want to just, we have a couple more minutes you want to share with them where you just spoke, you and your wife spoke with the same event that once Rachel Hollis spoke at. That's how I always promote it, because it's pretty impressive.
that is, yeah. So we spoke I spoke back in the summer with Rachel Hollis at this event, and then they invited Becky and I back together to this event. Hal Elrod spoke this time. If any of you read The Miracle Morning, he was one of the keynotes, did a phenomenal job. He's a great communicator. And so, so this was the first time, though, Becky and I spoke together on this subject and shared the stage together, which was super cool for both of us and for the people in the audience. But yeah, it was at a great, great conference called Top Summit down in Florida, you know, designed for successful network marketing professionals. So it was super for us to do.
Doesn't that event circulate? I mean, doesn't it tour the country? Like if people want to go to that event, can they just go online and look it up or no?
No, not that one. No, it's just a once a year thing.
Oh, it's just once a year. So the one I saw that was last summer, this was just another version of that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And there'll be another one coming up in March again. So.
All right. Top Summit. Okay. All right. Well, thanks. And thanks everybody for taking the time to join our call tonight. And Tim, we're so grateful for you. And we'll send the recording out, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.